This is going to be a walkthrough of a CCV reroute or vent to atmosphere, VTA, whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to go into crazy detail as to why this is done and what it can prevent. I'm just going to show you how it's done. And if you want the full synopsis on everything, you want the full story, all the nitty-gritty details, you want to go down that rabbit hole, stay till the end of the video and I'll explain everything. For now, I'm just going to show you how this is done. You've obviously clicked this video, you know what's happening. So this all cost me $63 minus the zip ties, which I already had, so $70 sounds about right for buying everything. This was a NAPA order. You can't buy any fewer than 2 coolant caps, so you just got to buy a pack of 2. I only needed 1 of those hose clamps. The coolant caps, the hose clamps, the zip ties you need, and of course the hose itself is a fuel hose. On NAPA it's listed as a fuel or PCV rated hose. This is important because oil vapor is going to be going through this. You don't want it breaking down the rubber. If you got like a coolant hose or something, that would be a concern. So make sure you get a fuel rated hose. And I got 6 feet of this. You could go longer if you wanted it. You could even do something like maybe route it into your exhaust. You could go right into your downpipe if you are freedom mode, or you can go past the DPF on an emissions and tac truck. But in this case, we're just going to be venting it to the atmosphere. Stick around to the end if you want to learn about why this is done and all the problems that not doing this can cause. If you're in cold weather, you need to do this. If you ever see freezing temperatures and you're still on your stock turbo, you need to do this, or you risk damaging your turbo, bending your turbo fins. Not that the DT44 isn't a cool upgrade or anything like that, but if you don't do this, you risk damaging your turbo. So just do this. This should only take you about an hour tops. Hopefully I've made this easy to follow along with, so it shouldn't take you that long. This took me about an hour and a half, using my flashlight, looking around and everything, filming, pausing, doing all these things. You are gonna need a aviation snips, screwdriver or socket for your hose clamp, and a 10mm socket. If you want to remove the studs, if you're not running an engine cover or engine foam, you're gonna need just a 10mm wrench. But that part is optional. It may make installing the hose easier. I don't think the hose itself is gonna be stressed too badly by leaving the stud in there. I thought it was, and I just took the studs out, and it didn't look like the hose was dying to get past that stud or anything like that. So, all right, so we got the full breakout here of all the items. This is provided that if you had none of these already, like I said earlier, I already had the zip ties, so I didn't have to spend money on that. But buying everything from the start, you're going to be looking at about 68 bucks on NAPA. You'll see here, we got the zip ties. This is the smallest quantity available. Your coolant caps, again, smallest quantity available. You're only going to need a single hose clamp. That's all I needed. And then finally, your fuel line. This is PCV rated. Make sure it's, fuel rated. Priced by the foot, so you have 6 of these in the cart. This all comes out to $68.41. Also, I just want to do a quick shout out to Steven Sodders and Richard Corbett from the Facebook group. I wouldn't have known really what to do, and especially Richard suggested, well, he didn't suggest, but he said he got all of his stuff from NAPA. Finally, that made me decide to do it. I was like, holy shit, this is simpler than I thought. So thanks, guys. Thanks for the wisdom, and probably wouldn't have done this without you guys, or I wouldn't have done it as soon if it weren't for you guys showing how simple and easy it is. For anyone already familiar with this process, this is going to be done slightly different than some of the photos of this procedure that's already online and on some of the Facebook posts. We're going to be doing this on the inside of the frame rail. And that's just to make sure that the line always stays nice and warm. We don't ever have to worry about anything freezing up in there in really, really cold weather. It's still decently far enough. It's several inches away from the exhaust, right up against the frame rail, but it is on the inside face, so that ambient heat should keep it nice and warm in the wintertime. This is our culprit here. So what I'm gonna do is get a aviation snips, tin snips. We're gonna get that connector off, that little clamp, and remove this hose. So our aviation snips here made pretty light work of that clamp. So I'm just gonna remove this hose now, get this connection open. We're also gonna get this clamp off here. So this is just a standard 10mm. Let's get this guy off here. I'm just gonna leave the screw in there in case, you know, we can use it. That did come off really easily. There was actually 2 layers to that clamp. I thought I had gotten it, but I only gotten the first layer, so the second layer right there. So that came off super easily, just slipped right off. I mean, it's an oiled connection, so it's gonna be lubricated. And we're gonna do the same exact thing with the aviation snips down here, it looks like. There's another clamp right here. And so we're gonna take the aviation snips to that and get that. All right, so we got it cut. Now let's see if it'll just pop right off here, hopefully. And there it goes. And this is our factory CCV hose. Removed. And yep, this is now what I'm now seeing what people were saying about the intake hole here. We're just gonna take one of those coolant caps that we bought and stick it right on. Hopefully it goes right on there. And let's try it out here. It should be a snug fit, so it stays. That's to be expected. And she's plugged. It's a nice and snug, tight fit right there. That is not going right. Well, this is the CCV outlet here, so we have to get our hose on here. Okay, I just realized something. If we're gonna preserve the bend, we have to do this the other way. Yeah, so your hose should be doing that. And then it should be going on the upside down, like that. We want to run this along the frame rail, but we obviously don't want it touching the exhaust. We're going to run it out to the left. What I imagine to be coolant hoses. We're going to run it just to the side of these, and then down, and then along the frame rail, running parallel to the exhaust. So we're not going to run it through this side on the left. We're going to be running it through the right side of that frame. But we will be running it through here, across, and then down right here, where you can see. See, I'm thinking we run it down first. Once we have most of it down there, then hook it in to the CCV. So we pretty much have it routed for the most part. It's ready to be plugged in. It's going down through this little space here. Here we go. So down here. So it's coming down here. Along the exhaust, this is the exhaust here. So obviously it's going to be zip tied to the frame. It's not going to be this close, but you can see it runs along the exhaust and goes over the frame there. And right along the DPF here is when it stops. I was actually expecting it to go a little bit further personally, but this will be fine. Should be. I just hope I don't get any smell in the cab. That's all I'm worried about. Now let's zip tie this up and I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. It's the next day and I've been running the setup just fine. Something I want to mention, and I'm splicing this clip in before the end of the video, and that's because if I would have known this, I would have done it while I was filming. And that's removing these two bolts. These two studs here. These studs here are for the engine cover and the foam. If you're not running the engine cover and the foam, you don't need to have these. And as you can see, it's actually causing my my hose here to bend a little bit. And if that stud were not in the way, I might have just a little bit more slack in that hose, and it might not be stressing it as much. Not to say that it's being overly stressed right now. So this is an option. You can remove the foam and the engine cover. There's really no downside. In my opinion, I think it's better this way because you can just see what's going on. It's a lot easier to access all the parts on the engine. In fact, I don't even know if the crankcase vent would have been accessible if the engine cover and the foam weren't removed. So these studs here are just going to be a 10 millimeter. I couldn't get any of my sockets, and I have deep sockets. I couldn't get any of my sockets to fit, I think because of these little nubs on the top there that make that difficult. So what you do is you just get yourself a little, we're just gonna get a little 10 mil wrench here. I think I'm gonna remove these bolts here because there's these studs. There's no point in having them really. It'll free up that bend, that kind of semi-harsh bend that's being put into the CCV hose that we've installed. So yeah, see, that's not bad. All right, so I've got those studs out now. No, to be honest, there wasn't really that much tension on that stud when it was being removed. You know, that would have suggested the hose was really trying to bend and the stud was getting in the way. Honestly, that might have been kind of pointless, but either way, it's not there anymore. Maybe the hose has just settled in the way it's bent and it's just settled like that. Or maybe it will continue to bend up a little more. I'm not sure. This is just to show that you can remove the studs. They're just there for the cover and the foam if you don't want them there. Certainly removing that stud would have made installing the hose easier. The stud was kind of in the way, getting that hose on and trying to screw the hose clamp in, but it wasn't that bad. All right, so the CCV is rerouted. Everything's tightened up. We even got that connector, that little plastic connector back on there. On our new CCV hose, fits right on. Goes down. Goes down here. Here we go. We have the hose coming down here. Not too close to the exhaust. And then right here is where we get our first zip tie. So it goes over the hanger. You can see it here going over the hanger. So it goes over the frame, over the hanger, continues through here. And I noticed it was putting pressure on the wiring of that sensor there when I had it zip tied. So I did not want it going over the wire, so I went under the wire here. And then I did a double zip tie. It would have been better to have a longer zip tie, but I took 2 zip ties together. We completed it right here. And you can see there's a nice little downward tilt to it, just like I wanted. So let's go ahead, let's start it up and make sure we have no messes or weird stuff going on in the engine bay. Alright, so if you're wondering why we do this mod, there's a couple things. What happens on a stock engine is your crankcase, your engine, whatever you want to call it, is venting. It's breathing out oil mist as it operates. In the stock configuration, that oil mist is being taken right back in through the intake. Now, normally, that wouldn't be an issue if it were just that. What's happening, though, is you also have EGR gases mixing in with this oil mist, partially unburnt combustion gases, soot. So what happens is this is going to mix together and create a sticky, gooey, glue-like, tar-like substance, and it's just horrible. this gets in your intake and it gets it filthy. Over time, this will accumulate, and ultimately in the wintertime, this mixture can actually sludge over in freezing weather. And this is the leading theory because several users have installed regular catch cans on their trucks and have reported all types of crap that they've caught in these catch cans. Guess what happens when that gets into your turbo? All of that oil mist, but most importantly, any kind of condensation that is now frozen over, is that sludge is going to get into your turbo, and your turbo is going to try to spin, but there's some obstruction in there, and it's going to bend those turbo fins as the turbo tries to spin. So damn it, reroute your CCV. Don't bend your turbo fins. It's easy. Not only that, there's another thing. Having a dirty intake like this can also foul the map sensor. And when this sensor is dirty, it becomes one of a couple different things that can trigger the gremlin code P026D. So by taking care of this issue, by rerouting the CCV, you can stop further future potential damage to your turbo during cold weather. And also, if you can, at a later time, get your intake cleaned out, you can ensure that your map sensor won't be getting fouled in the same way. Because you can reroute your CCV like this, and you can pull your map sensor out and you can clean it. But all that crap is still going to be in there. The same crap that fouled your map sensor, it's still all in there. And if you were to clean your intake out without doing this, you would just get a nasty, dirty intake again, and you'd be running into the same issue. Now, EGR is also problematic, but it's way, way worse when you have the EGR gas mixing with the oil mist. So, and EGR is a different demon. I've seen photos of some EGR coolers that were removed from some trucks. They really didn't look that bad, I'll be honest with you. I saw some EGR coolers that were taken out. They were servicing them. They really didn't look too bad, which leads me to believe that it seems like EGR mixing with the CCV mist is the real problem here. So to finish the video off, we're just going to talk about a couple other solutions to tackle the CCV/PCV issue. For a while, it seemed like the catch can was the most popular solution. You had a couple ways you could do this. Still, you have a couple ways you can do this. You have either a kit. The ProVent is probably one of the most popular kits. It's 100% bolt-on. They have all the fittings. It's a sealed catch can, so you're gonna probably see less smells from the oil. I can tell you after using the truck with the CCV vented to atmosphere, I can smell it. You can definitely smell it from outside the truck. I'm not getting any cab smell, which is what I was concerned about, so I can tell you no cab smell, that's good. But it does create a smell from outside the truck. The ProVent picture here seems like it's more of a sealed system, so you may see less smell. It's also just a nice kind of fancy looking unit. There's two big problems with the catch can, this one anyway in particular, because you can just buy some generic Amazon catch cans for cheap and some hose and throw together your own catch can setup for a lot cheaper. So cost is only an issue with the kit. You can fab together your own kit for a lot cheaper. So cost aside, not talking about cost, there is an issue with catch cans, and that is that it's added maintenance. You have to take care of your catch can. You have to service it now. You have to remember to dump this thing out periodically and not let it fill up. If it does fill up, you're either looking at a mess in your engine bay or you're looking at an unhappy rear main seal. You're especially looking at an unhappy rear main seal if anything in this catch can begins to freeze over. This Provent pictured here supposedly has a special check valve in there where if it senses pressure from anything freezing over, that it'll exit through this safety check valve. But your generic Amazon catch cans aren't going to have this feature. It's added complexity and maintenance, and for a kit like this, almost $500 frickin' dollars, okay? Now, like I said, you can fab together your own Amazon kit, but the only benefit to these catch cans is because it's more of a sealed system, you're looking at potentially less smell and maybe even less smoke if you are running a modified truck. I've heard of some cases where people with modified trucks saw some smoke out of their vent-to-atmosphere hose. I haven't seen anything like that on mine. Mine's stock, so I haven't seen anything like that. It's funny that this picture is again from Diesel Drax. He must be either great at taking pictures or his posts have been on the forums long enough to where they just come up first on Google. But either way, I just figured I'd mention that. I think it's funny. This is probably the third or more picture from Diesel Drax now. But good on you, man. You take good pictures. That's why I used it in the video. So I mentioned it in the very beginning of the video about possibly routing it into your exhaust. And a couple of people on our Facebook group actually went ahead and did that. They went ahead and have actually piped this into their exhaust. I think a couple other people did this as well. These are just the two off the top of my head that I heard about recently with pictures. Now they're doing this because they can. They don't have a completely stock truck. You wouldn't want to do this if you have a completely stock truck for the most part. If your truck is modified and it can work with this setup, this is a great way to do it because this just goes straight into your exhaust. You don't have to worry about any smells too close to the truck because all of that stuff is going to be blown out, with some velocity out the exhaust pipe and kind of mix in with everything else. So this is definitely a nice way to do it if your truck can support it. I was thinking about it recently. I don't even know if this would be possible, but and no one's done it yet. I haven't heard of anyone doing it yet, but you may be able to pipe it into your exhaust in this same way if you have the valve and hose going into your exhaust immediately after the DPF, right past the DPF, because you don't want to do this on a normal truck, on a completely stock truck, but you may be able to do this after the DPF on a stock truck. Who knows? I might try and experiment with that someday, but for now, I've just went ahead and vented this. It's easy, cheap for the most part, zero maintenance, set it and forget it solution. And we've also, most importantly, we've done this on the inside of the frame rail to make sure that nothing can freeze over in that line. Because that ambient heat from the exhaust will keep our VTA hose nice and warm, make sure nothing freezes up in there, it'll be flowing out freely. So that's pretty much about it. Hopefully I've explained the entire CCV, PCV, VTA, fucking acronym city over here, Iceberg here for you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about how retarded and shitty the video is, go ahead and leave a comment. I'd appreciate it. And that's it. Hope you have a good one. Bye.